In this example, we have a cost, revenue, profit application. And we've done a lot of problems similar to these, but this one is going to involve an inequality, which we'll see towards the end. So let's start by reading the question and highlighting important information. So you decide to begin selling bags of goldfish at the local art festival. Your cost for each bag of goldfish is $1.97, plus you have to pay a fixed weekly fee of $150 for the booth. Your plan is to sell each bag of goldfish for $3.75. So that's all of our important information, and now we're going to be asked to write expressions that represent cost, revenue, and profit. So first let's look at cost, and we're going to start by defining our variables. So here it says write an expression to represent your total cost of the week if you sell n bags of goldfish. So let's write that. N equals the number of bags of goldfish sold. Okay. And now let's write what the total cost will be in words, and then we're going to translate that into an algebraic expression involving n. So the total cost, well, we know it's going to be $1.97 for each bag of goldfish. So $1.97 per bag, plus a fixed weekly fee of $150. So I'm just going to write plus $150. So that's for the booth where you're going to sell the goldfish. Now, remember, this is $1.97 per bag of goldfish. So this part is variable. It's always $1.97 per bag, but it depends on the number of bags of goldfish sold. So this is n. The 150, so this is the variable piece that changes depending on the number of goldfish. And the other piece, the total cost, you're renting one booth, that's all there is. It's $150. They can't change that. So our total costs are going to equal $197 times n. So you multiply $1.97 times the number of bags of goldfish plus $150 for the booth. So let's put that here. So now that was our total cost. Now remember, revenue represents all the money you take in. So that would be how much money is in your cash register at the end of the day. Okay, so it doesn't take into account how much things cost. That's where we look at profit. So revenue is going to be, I'm just going to write revenue equals, well, you're going to charge $3.75 per bag of goldfish. So it's $3.75 per bag. Just going to write of GF for goldfish. So this is all the money that's coming in, and this is variable. There's no fixed amount like there was before. All the money that you're going to take in depends on how many goldfish you sell. And we could write this symbolically as 3.75 n, because we'd multiply the number of bags of goldfish sold times $3.75 per bag of goldfish sold. So let's write this here, 3.75 n. Now the next one is profit. So now remember that profit is equal to revenue minus cost. Okay, so for example, to use simple numbers, if you took in $200 and it cost you $50 in fish and renting the booth, even though that's impossible, then your profit would be 200 minus 50. Okay, so it's all the money you take in by selling the goldfish minus what you have to pay, because we all know goldfish aren't free. So we can actually use our expressions that we already have. So we know the revenue is $3.75 per goldfish, And now we want to subtract off the cost. So we need to subtract this entire expression. And I'm going to write this in parentheses, minus 1.97n plus 150. Okay. Now we could think about distributing this subtraction as a negative 1 to these two terms. And in 1 second we'll talk about how this connects. Minus 1.97n minus 150. So I just wanted you to see why these parentheses are important. If we had just put the cost expression here without the parentheses, it would look like our profit was $150, which was the cost of renting the booth, but we really have to pay that $150. So notice if you put it in parentheses and you distribute this as a negative sign, you get minus 150. Or equivalently, if you wanted to, you could just say, well, this is my cost, I subtract or this is my revenue, I make $3.75 per goldfish. I subtract the $1.97 per goldfish that it cost me, and I'm also going to subtract $150 off of that total for renting the booth. So that's the meaning of this. But now these are like terms and we can simplify. And you could think, well, if I make $3.75 per goldfish, or collect, and it costs me $1.97, the difference would be how much profit you get per goldfish. So $3.75 is what you bring in, $1.97 is what you pay. So your profit is $1.78 per goldfish. Minus, you still have to pay the $150 for the booth. So this is your profit expression. Let's write that in a different color. 178n minus 150. Now let's look at the next part. How many bags of goldfish must you sell in order to make a positive profit? And then it says in order to make a positive profit, you need to sell blank bags of goldfish. Okay. So we would want a positive profit. Oops, I just saw there was supposed to be an n there. 178n minus 150. This is our profit expression. We would want this to be greater than 0. So we want profit to be positive, which means you make more than $0. So now let's solve this inequality. So solving an inequality is a lot like solving an equation. We can use all of the rules we learned before. We can add the same number to both sides, subtract, multiply, or divide. The one difference is if you multiply or divide by a negative, you reverse the sign of the inequality. It doesn't look like that's going to happen here, but still keep that in mind. It's not exactly the same, it's just very similar. So first, I want to get n by itself to find the least number of fish I need to sell in order to make a profit. So I'm going to start by adding 150. And let's just think about what this means. We have 1.78n is greater than 150. Well, that's because you're making $1.78 per fish, and that has to cover the costs, the $150 of renting the booth. If it's not greater than 150, then you're going to end up paying money for this whole endeavor. So now we want to say, well, how many fish do we have to sell earning a profit of $1.78 to be greater than 150? So we want to see how many $1.78s are in $150, and that will be division. And notice you can also think of this abstractly as you're multiplying these two numbers. To get 1n, you would divide both sides by the number multiplied by n. So let's do this part on the calculator. 150 divided by 1.78 equals, and we have, let's just round this to 2 decimal places for now, 84.27. So n needs to be greater than 84.27. Now notice if you only sold 84 bags of goldfish, then your profit would be a little bit negative. So this value right here actually represents where it's exactly equal to zero, kind of where you break even. But we want it to be positive, so we're going to need to round up, and you could think of it as the more goldfish you sell, the larger your profit. So we're going to round up to a minimum of 85 bags of goldfish need to be sold. So in order to make a positive profit, you will have to sell a minimum of 85 bags of goldfish.